think it's needless to say that I'm very happy that I know that you could make it, that you could join us for this version, for this edition of our Friday presentation and talk. I know I've mentioned this to you before. This is a platform that we have. It's a recurring event that we use to present each other with working results, with ideas, with concepts, to learn from each other, because this is a very important theme within our project, the mutual learning that we do. And I think we have already established that there are quite a few commonalities between what we want to achieve as a project and between what Anu is doing professionally. But I think I would just give a very short introduction to why Anu is here. So Anu, you are an associate professor at the Hanze University of Applied Sciences, and you are responsible for the research group Region to Region for Regional Resilience. And judging by that title, we can already tell that there is quite a few words in it that we are also working on as a project. Just to provide this picture to you, the SIRR project, it's about sustainability, innovation, and resilience in rural areas. So we can already see that, judging by the terms, that there is quite a bit of overlap going on. And Anu and I, we've been working together since 2020 now, I believe. So it's 6 years already. We've been doing quite a few projects, international projects, Erasmus Plus projects, mostly on developing framework for regional transitions and also applied solutions on how to foster the competencies and the knowledge elements needed for that transition. And in this seminar specifically, Anu will share her perspectives on strengthening regional resilience through collaboration and transition. So I'm very much looking forward to your presentation, Anu. And I don't want to waste too much time since you have a lot to tell us. So I would say the stage is yours, but maybe some technicalities first. Are you able to share your screen on your own, or should I do it for you?
No, I'd like to do it myself, if you don't mind.
Okay.
No, I think I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing. Okay. No, something went wrong. So let me try again. Sorry about that. Technology is not my biggest, innovation is. I picked the wrong window, of course. So just if I can, oh yeah, that's where I need to be.
Maybe just a quick add-on in the meantime, while the presentation is being uploaded. So Anu, you were intending to do a 40 minutes presentation, and after that we will have the chance to discuss it, ask questions, and get an open discussion going. I do have some backup questions for you, but I'm really hoping that there will be many questions from you.
Okay, this is something new that's happening online. That's okay. Oh, I don't know. Okay, so always something new. I'm not sure. Is this the presentations? Are you seeing the whole screen, or are you seeing the whole slides? Just to check. Sorry about this, guys.
Yes, we do.
Okay. At least I do. Well, okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Arne, for inviting me. Actually, I was just thinking about it. It's quite funny, but I think we even had a joint presentation at the European Week of the Regions years ago. At that time, we were doing Public Start, another project, which also I think Arne was also involved. So our collaboration, even with SIRR, I think has been longer than maybe evident to everyone in this group. But thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. And like Arne said, there's a lot of issues that we've been looking at together with Arne but a lot of partners across Europe. So my name is Anu Manickam, and I am from Hanze. Maybe just to say, we're a University of Applied Sciences. So all our projects, all our research are always applied. In fact, we call it transformative research. What I do, I work with practice for the practice, and we do a lot of co-creative events. And one of the most important, effective instruments that we have found, and this is really from like 15 years of doing this work, is really the understanding or insight that European projects or project works, but especially European projects with other regions, is one of the best ways to work with your stakeholders or stakeholders that are united on the topic that you are. So I just want to say that. So in that sense, I'm really happy that this is also a project that takes on this same perspective and action. So in the different discussions with Arne, we came out, or I have distilled in any case, 3 different aspects to try to talk about how can we, when we look at our rural, especially our rural regions, how can we cultivate innovations? And I've picked out 3 topics for that. So, so I'm now wondering whether, is it working like I wanted? Okay, yes. So these are the 3 things. I want to just talk very briefly about regional innovation systems. Obviously, it's in your, it's the core of your project, but I just want to touch on it. And very much then going on, but also based on complexity and complexity approaches. And then, of course, finally looking at resilience and then tying that all 3 together to explain why am I doing this today. So if I start with the first topic of regional innovation systems, what most of us, and I think a lot of what I'm going to say is not going to be new, but I think maybe it's good to put it sometimes to make explicit what we all know, that it is not mechanical, it's very dynamic, it's a living environment, which is why it is very hard to do this. This being, how do we cultivate our regional innovation ecosystems? And that's because everything's changing. Because people are interacting and responding to the changes around them. And this is like the first tenet and the most important thing that we need to understand. And I think we do understand, but maybe constantly put it as a basic tenet in our work, that what we see is that these big challenges that we are all facing in our world, and I don't think we need to even start to talk about it, even though I will touch on it in a little bit, is that it's forcing us to re-examine at how we do things and how we look at things and how are we acting on these. So, and these are what, as Arne talked about, it's about the transitions that we're seeing that our systems are failing. They're not always, they're very good at a lot of things, but not very adequate in dealing with complex, grand challenges that we're dealing with. And so when we talk about regional innovation systems, I think we need to really understand that it's all about the people, it's all about how we work together and how we interact together. And therefore, and this is something as professionals, and this is also for me, but also for everybody I work with, we very often forget that if we really want to do this right, we need to get everybody on board. And then the question is, how do we do that? Sometimes it's as easy as just inviting everybody. So one of the things in strategy in regional policy is who's at the table. And very often we tend to congregate with those that are around us. And I'll give you some examples as we go along. But basically, we need to have a multiple helix or quintuple helix, as I have called here. Very often, I think more and more universities are finding businesses. I think that's a really good, that's becoming even better, that we're finding each other in ways that were not always very obvious. Government. So in this, I think here in your project, as with a lot of our projects, that we've included our government in there. I saw that Dick Outman was in the audience just now, and he's a very important local municipality that we work a lot with in these European projects. So, and then you also have obviously us as knowledge institutes, but also other social or NGOs or societal agencies that can be very important. But and don't forget the citizens. And that's something, I think, something that we always need to think about. Civic organizations are great ways to connect with them. So I'm just going to move on, and some of these things will keep coming back again in my slides or in my little presentation today. what we've seen is that when we manage to get people to work together on these challenges, so when we talk about transitions, it's always about dealing with some transitions. How do we change our systems and how we work together? You see that new forms of collaborations happen. The nice thing about systems work, and my background is in complex adaptive systems, a small change somewhere in the system, a new interaction can change everything in the system. So it can be, and in this case, I'm talking about organizations, that when organizations start to work, whether it's the municipality with the university or with business and universities, something will start to change. It may not always be changing immediately, but the moment you start to get these collaborations together, you even just like a webinar like this, you get people get together and to start dialogues, the whole ecosystem changes. And in the slide sort of captures it, that what you see is that because of these different types of societal challenges, you need to get new stakeholders, the quintuple helix or the multiple helix, and you see that new types of collaborations take place. So they can be in the form of new clusters, it can be cooperatives, it can be private-public enterprises. They can take various forms, and the moment that that's happening, you're already changing the ecosystem. And when you do this, what you see, and this is actually the most interesting for me, and this is where a lot of my work at the moment is looking at if from an organizational perspective, if more and more of our work is outside our organizational boundaries, literally outside our office walls, it means that something has to change within organizations. And that's one of the things I will also, we'll come back to this again, but it means that next to our business as usual, we need to create a second and parallel system that facilitates and strengthens and connects to what we do outside, not just in projects. Projects are a great way to start, but it needs to move to a more programmatic level or in a more structural level. And we've been working and experimenting on this for more than 10 years in our region. We try to create new types of collaborations at an institutional level to deal with these very big regional challenges. So if I just continue with it, but what we have seen, and although everybody understands this, but it's still in a process of really getting to land there, is that we all need to focus on these very common social challenges, whether it's climate adaptation, whether it's digital security, whether it's about food security, digital. So all these big challenges that we're facing, how do we keep our autonomy? How do we keep ourselves safe in a very changing world, which is what resilience is about. We need to take as a starting point that everybody works on these social challenges, and it can be, and I'm just not talking, that we're not going to solve climate change on the global level, but we need to at least start talking about it and dealing with it in our own neighborhood, in our own regions. And in order to do that, it involves it is not something say, okay, we do it, but it does require a whole process. And we call it the collective sense-making process. It's a process that, it's also coming from a book that we written, it's called Reclaiming Common Good. Because we do need to deal with these urgent challenges, and we can't deal with it as governments alone or as knowledge institutions just doing research or business alone. We need to do it together. And in order to do that, and this diagram captures it, and I'm not going to go too much into detail with it, but you need to get people around the table, create spaces where then you can work on these common challenges. And like I said, a project like this is also a good starting point to at least to start to understand and define. When you say we want to cultivate rural innovation ecosystem, then you need to sit and talk about it. What do you mean by it? Because we all have different pictures in our heads. So we do need to talk about it. And I'll explain that when I talk about complexity. So just running through this. So regional really regional innovation systems, and if we say we're going to solve these challenges, it's really about how do we get everyone around the table? How do we build trust? How do we get create the spaces both in time, but also getting mandates from your organizations to work on these things together? So so that's really in short, and I think a lot of this is nothing new for you, but I want to go to the next one. And I've understood for Arne that I think you have been looking and talking about complexity. I'm just going to check with Arne now. This is correct, right, Arne? Yes. Yeah. But I would still like to go through it. And why complexity? Just obviously because, like I said, a lot of our solutions, sometimes very simple, sometimes very good solutions, but they do not work for dealing with societal challenges. So in order to really understand, just to make a distinction between what we do normally in our daily lives as professionals and complexities, that putting a rocket to the star, to the moon, it's not an easy task, but it is a complicated task. But if you have the right expertise, you will be able to achieve it. But a lagging region like ours as well, and I think in rural innovation, so a lot of our rural regions, they are a lagging region. It's very complex, and you cannot only with specialists solve it. Sorry for all of us on this call, maybe, but we are needed. But alone with specialists, you don't get there. So that's why you need your multiple helix, and you need everybody on board. And I've been looking at that, and in our agro food, in a project on peatlands, which is to do with climate adaptations. But we also, we've been talking to the municipality, we've been talking to farmers, we talk to everyone on the chain. And we are trying to see how do we improve and involve our engagement with consumers who have a big talk in it. So we bring everyone on board. Another reason why it is that we need to connect with, or we need to use complexity and at least understand that all our challenges are complex, is because everything that we do in our region is affected by what happens nationally and at the European level and at the global level. But it's also the other way around. Whatever we do in our regions, our daily behavior, how we organize our regions has also impact on Europe, and on the world. So, and and complexity is that interconnectedness of systems. But the nice thing about it is that if one thing changes, it changes everything else in all of those systems. So if Europe gives a directive that we have to do the Green Deal, then it affects our local policies, national policies, local policies, but also whether or not, what the price of petrol on my, for me is, or whether or not public transport infrastructure is being encouraged. So, but at the same time, if people take to the streets, you see that also affects policy. So when we talk about systems and complexities, and I think this is really, really important, we all know it, but we need to really understand that the crux of complexity and the complex challenges we face is the interconnectedness of those things. And just to tell you, I mean, I think we know this, but transitions are difficult. But a lot of times we understand that we need to do it. And why is it so difficult? Because everybody, and I say every partner in this challenge, and that's going back to your multiple helix, everybody has to change. And everybody has changed, especially as institutions. The most important change that we need to do is that we have to stop saying that, okay, I'm making strategy for 5 years based on what we want. No, if we say that common challenges and we want to have a better region and a future for a region, everybody has to start to work from outside in. And this means that what are the challenges we face? What direction do we want to go? And that has to be leading in everything else within our organizations, whether we're a government, whether we're education, or whether a business or a civic organization. Oops, I don't know. So the other thing is, well, I can put that up. Oh, sorry. Like I said, this is a new mode of. So everything, when we talk about interconnectedness, this is, I'm just going to gloss over this very quickly, but I think you will recognize it. The reason why there's such a big urgency for us to focus on as regions as well as individuals is that we're facing a lot of crises, and all of them are interconnected. So the climate crisis has to do with the food crisis, the war in Ukraine, the big geopolitical shifts, the undermining of democracy, the rich-poor divide, energy. So if you really look at all of these major crises, before we'd say we'll have someone working on food, there may be a dedicated policy, and maybe within our region we may even have a task force focused on each of these things separately. But more and more, it's becoming more than obvious that these things are affecting each other, and that means that we need to change how we work. So. And this is just a very small example about how systems are connected. So whatever happens in the rural area, in our areas, it affects cities because a lot of young people are migrating to cities, and cities are getting problems, and their problems are may also, again, we are seeing a great influx of people from Amsterdam and that region now moving to the countryside because it's too crowded and congested. So you see that again. I showed you the poly crisis affecting individually regions and so forth, but you also see that systems that we think are quite autonomous, cityscapes, are connected very much to ruralscapes, for example. So the interconnectedness is also sometimes horizontal, even at the same level. And this is actually the most important thing that we need to look at, and is that different types of problems need different approaches. So when I showed you the thing about the rockets going to the moon, and our region as innovation in lagging region, those are two different types of approaches. And this slides really highlights that one of the first basic things we need to always understand when we say, okay, we have a problem. The first question is, what type of problem? Is it a complex problem? Is it a complicated problem? And an easy way to identify what's a complex problem is what's on the two axes, the degree of conflict in values, and the degree of uncertainty. So the more stakeholders we have who have different ideas about what is important. So in our region, I don't know if you know, we have the largest natural gas in Europe. And for a long time, we had companies like Shell, the government, who had different interests in taking out the gas as the people living here. And now we have, for years now, earthquakes. And even to stop the gas extraction was a very difficult thing because everybody had a different interest. So just to give you a very small example here. So when we look at any particular problem, so if we looked at our region and we wanted to solve what was our biggest how do we make our regions more a better place and to have future, to have jobs? If we did not talk about the gas extraction, but we only talked about jobs, we were going to lose. We were not going to solve the problem. So this is just a little bit of an example. You get the slides as I've understood from Arne, so I'm not going to go through the details. It explains some of the things. What's the difference in approaches for those things? So going back to the point that I made earlier, it's about embracing complexity, and is really the first most important thing is changing how we look at things and changing our mindsets. First of all, acknowledging complexity, and the second thing is how do we do this outside in? Again, this is a table that has all the details of it. Like we need a new paradigm, and this reflects very much in what you see in the red bottom, the bubbles on the bottom. What I talked about earlier about system 1 and system 2. System 1 is business as usual. how all our organizations are very well organized in departments with very defined mandate, strategy, KPIs. This is how we all work, except it's brought us a lot of good for the things it was set up for, but they were not set up for dealing with more complex and regional societal challenges. So that's where we say we need a new type of paradigm, and that's where the outside in is one of the most important things. And this is what system 2, we say that a lot of organizations do it. Like I said, we have little projects like, you have this SIRR project, or you have a task force digitalization that works with, other companies or other institutions, but they're usually ad hoc, and they need to be a more structural part of how your basic organization works to make that better, and it needs to grow. At the moment, most organizations may have 5 to 10% on system 2, but it needs to be almost on par with how you do the rest of your business, and it needs to be connected. So this is a way about, this is really very, very hands-on. How do we change? If we have these complex challenges and we want to work together, what needs to happen? And this is one of the starting points, and starting to think outside in is really, really the most important part of it. So this last part of it is on bringing that together, is building resilience, is about, okay, bouncing forward and not backwards. Because we are all tuned to say, okay, but I did it this way before. It always works. I'm sure we always say that our grandparents talk like that, but I think all of us talk like that. It's always worked for us, but we do need to change. And that's resilience is, how do we get our regions to be future-proof? The first tenet, this is really important, is diversity. Why? And diversity is important in complexity. That's like in all complexity sciences, they'll tell you that the more diverse you are, the more complex the problem, the more diversity you need. And when we talk about diversity, it can be on ecologically, it's about diversity. So we talk about biodiversity, different types of landscape. In society, social aspects are backgrounds, cultural, age. Those are all different types of diversity. You can think about economically in terms of industries and actors, including profit and non-profit. I think social entrepreneurship is a very good example about how that's growing to make that economic landscape more diverse. Knowledge, obviously, that you need all sorts of different knowledge, including the wisdom of the crowds, the people, about the intelligence of people there, and political diversity. So that there's a lot of transparency, there's a lot more democratic policy making is part of that. When we talk about resilience, it's really about adaptive capacity. How do we respond? It's about responses. I told you that systems are made up of interaction. So it's really about when something changes, when we have a challenge, how do we respond? And that's the core of resilience, is how can we make our responses more diverse and more adaptive. So, and then of course, what I've been talking about quite a few times here today is the outside in. So one of the things I wanted as an example is that in a project that we do around peatlands and farming, there was a lot of distance between farmers because they were very angry because the peatlands needed to be re-wetted for climate change and CO2 absorption. But a lot of times politicians or the local governments were really having difficulty reaching out to them because they had these town hall meetings and they invited them, but it felt very much top down. Because that's thinking from how they always did it. So what we did when we in our project, we recommended that we changed the approach to farmers, and we went on expeditions. So what we did was we went with the farmers. So the municipalities were part of the expeditions, but with a very clear goal and aim, and which was that we're going there to hear what is their dream, what are their challenges, and suddenly. But including the politicians or the municipality policymakers, were having, for the first time, a very different type of conversation. So this is an example of how instead of saying, okay, we're going to have participation and consultation, and then they organize this thing and then they think everybody comes to us. So no, you turn it around, and working outside in is that you go to the people involved. Obviously, it is a different approach. It may require different resources, but in the end, they're having the conversations and the inputs that they were not getting for a long time. So this is an example of an outside-in adaptation. But that means, and this is really very important, that means that in order to work outside in order to work in a multiple helix, you need investments in skills infrastructure and innovation capacities. And you need to have investments to change how your system is as it is. And like I said, you need to have a more adaptable, flexible system dedicated to working outside in. So going back to the question on investment in skills, here are some things that I've mentioned more in detail. So I'm not going to read, I think you can read it. It's really, human capital. It's about having infrastructure is important. If one of the biggest things and challenges I think now for rural areas is the digital age. How do we help our regions become more digital? Every single, whether it's an individual citizen or civic organizations, businesses. And yes, on the one hand, we need to set up we do need to make sure that there's a robust infrastructure. We have good, 5G or 4G or whatever it is that is, or 6G even now. But also how to make sure that we have training and facilities to be very inclusive in this. So in our region, there's a lot of libraries that are now having digital help hours for people who are not very digitally capable. But so just an example that you need to make sure that when we do these, if we are going to be future-proof, you do need to have skills, infrastructure, and also create innovation spaces for people to do that together. So, and the focus needs to be how do we build our region so that we become more resilient, and then you look at all the constituents as well as a whole. So this is just an example. I'm not going to go through it. It's not you can't even read it. It's in the book called Regions Taking the Lead. I think Arne would be aware of it. This is the Dutch version, but sorry. But if Arne, I can give Arne some copies if you're interested in it. It just shows what does it mean when businesses, governments, and educational institutions. I think we have 3 examples of what does that mean in terms of your organization in creating new system 2 for the outside-in perspective. So, and I think we're almost coming to the last couple of slides. It's really about, and this is something that I think is also that we need to build strong social capital and inclusive governance. And I think, I'm sure this is a lot of your work in this project as well. It's about nurturing trust relationships. Because as I said, the basis of systems is interactions. So in order to have interactions and good interactions, trust is very important. And if we want to work on common challenges, there must be openness. And to do that, there needs to be trust. And like I said, with the farmers, that example of the farmers is that there was the distrust between governments and farmers. I think it is everywhere among citizens, but with farmers, I think is one of the biggest challenges because the distrust is really big. So finding ways to be able to engage in conversations and start to build that trust again is really important. Because once you have built trust relationships, then then you can start talking about, the collective process of trying to understand what we need to do. And bottom up, and this is also a very important thing, that top-down solutions are not always very effective in dealing with challenges, regional challenges. But you do need top-down. I'm not saying you don't, but it's also just as important to have the bottom-up initiatives and decision-making and participation of everybody. And of course, being a regional scientist myself, place-based policy shaping the regions are a good scale of space in systems to enact, local and regional, but regional really is an important one. And then therefore, that's why I think your project is so important. And to sort of coming to the last, to sort of coming closer to the last part of this particular one is what we want to do is try to instill in our regions, in all the institutions, but also as individuals, how can we make flexible learning-based governance? And when you talk about this, it's really about including diverse stakeholders, having as a rule or as a norm continuous adaptation. And that's a very difficult one. And if you want to be continuously adapting, you have to be a learning institution and a learning region. And putting as a focus the regional challenges and the common good. And what we mean by common good is that the well-being and prosperity of everybody as being a common challenge. And those are like the rules of the game, because that's one of the way you can make change, is that you agree. Governance is always about rules, that you agree on. This is how we move forward as a region, and then as constituents within that. I'm not going to even show you again. This is something coming out of our regions book, how that then plays into all the different aspects of it, and to be able to do this and what that brings about. So just to now conclude, to bring all of that together, is that why do we focus on regional innovation systems? It's what's going to provide the networks, the who do we need to get involved? Who needs to be there? Complexity is important because it provides the right mindset. It's about how we go about dealing with our regional challenges to make our regions more future-proof. And resilience is, if we do it right, that's really why we do it. And that sort of concludes what I've to say to you today. And this illustration sort of just captures that we have to have collective action. We have to have collective sense making on understanding what our regional challenges, and also within that, and maybe I have not said enough about it, what is our collective ambition and goal and dreams? Like the farmers, what do we want as a region? And in order to know that, you need to have those collective sessions, and together we say, hey, this is what we want for ourselves, our grandchildren, our children, for generations to come. And in order to do that, how do we build trust, openness, and how do we include everyone? So that's about my story. Here's a small example about if you really want to do it well. It's just a very small example. If your soil is degraded for whatever reason, you could solve it individually, or you can say, hey, why don't all the people involved in it create a cooperative? Cooperatives are great examples how you can do. And if you do it right, and if you do it in a sustainable way, then you start a new composting. For example, you start a composting business based on cooperatives, so you share the risks. And maybe by doing that, you become less dependent on external sources for keeping your soils healthy. And in that way, keep your money in, you create jobs. So very, very simple example, but maybe just to illustrate that in a very practical way. So that was my story, and I think I made it within 40 minutes. So Arne, maybe just to be very good, just resources. Oh, yeah. And this based on some of the skills, some of the two projects that we're working on. Buffer is what I talked about on farmers, and shifting skills is the other project that Arne is also involved in, where we talked about the need for outside in and transition skills. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anu. It's always a great experience to hear you talk about your work with such passion. It's great. So thank you so much. There are like already a couple of ideas
go ahead.
And comments and questions running through my head, but we've been talking about these things for quite a while now, Anu. And as a matter of fact, the two of us, we will see each other again in person in Bergen next week, and we will continue to talk about many of these things that were shown on your slide. I'm sure of it. So that is why I would actually like to open up the stage for discussion for all of you. But maybe very little thing ahead. Anu, you mentioned that it would be possibility to provide us with some copies of your books, maybe. And judging by some of the comments that I've already seen in the chat, I'm thinking that this could be a good idea.
Sure,
maybe.
no, sure.
I
Look,
see
I don't think
nodding.
I'll carry it to Bergen next week, but either, you know, we can arrange that. I think Festa
Yeah.
is about a 2-hour drive, so either you
No,
come visit
I
us or
mean,
we visit
yeah,
you. Not at
there will
all.
be a next visit to Hanze.
Sure.
I'm sure of it, and then let's try to think about
Your
that
project is
because there
also
is
welcome to come.
yeah, there is a partnership conference in Lesse coming up in April this year, so it might be a good opportunity to actually spread some of your materials and some of your books there. Yeah,
Sure.
that
Thank
was
you.
just a tiny comment, but now please, the stage is yours. Do you have any questions, comments? We've already established, and I think Alistair wrote it in the chat already, that it's quite refreshing to see experts from outside of this project partnership to talk about the same experiences and the same concepts and ideas that we're also using in this project. What are your comments and questions?
I do want to say thanks to everyone who gave claps and applauses. Thank you.
Charlotte, I think you
Okay.
were first.
I tried to wait, but I couldn't hold myself. No, thank you very much. It was so inspiring, and I would just like to sit on your shoulder for the rest of the year. You made things very clear to understand, and since we are looking into this innovation ecosystem coming up very much, it was so helpful, and I will be sure to share this link to this recording to all the hubs before of the workshop that we will do in a few weeks around the hubs ecosystems. And well, there's so much I'm taking with me, and you made it so clear how the whole EU are working with this like an innovation process with all these projects, collecting this collective knowledge and making good practices that can be brought up by others. And I just saw the whole scene that I haven't seen before, how the EU project work or how it's laid out and structured, why and how it works. Of course, not so effective that you would like, but it just made so much more sense to me now. And because you can get a lot of comments that it does no good, those projects, just a lot of money flow down into things that doesn't give that much outcome. But this is really, you made that also clear to me, or clearer anyway. And I just have one question, or I have a lot of questions, but I would just like to focus on one. And so we are a municipality, and we are part of a development department with a special method, you could say, with industrial and social symbiosis. And we work with project fundings, but we also fund a little bit by the municipality. And also, of course, we are working with the goals of the municipality in whole, or the objectives of the municipality. And sometimes we are, if I dare to say, a bit questioned, what good do we do on local basis working with these big structures or system questions? Why should the municipality put money and effort into that? And it's not that they don't, but they would like to hear the argument. And I would just like to hear your sell argument for that, is if possible. I mean, the common good is a goal, but when you have to struggle with education or elder care, it's sometimes hard to keep your head focused on the longer goals.
No, I thank you so much, Charlotte. I'm glad if that presentation helped to bring some clarity and some overview. I'm always happy to hear that, because that's also part of our work. Because, like I said, I think we all go through that process. We struggle, we find, trying to figure out what makes sense, and that's been my personal journey with my team as well, and with the partners like our, partners that we work with for years now. I just wanted to jump into your question. and this is why I'm so happy that Dick from Westerkwartier is, Dick Altman is here, because this is a municipality we've been working now, I think, for 10 years, 7 to 10 years now in the meantime, trying to convince them why they have to do exactly what you just said. And it is very, very hard. So and I do acknowledge, and I have a lot of respect for municipalities, because the national governments a lot of times just dumps a lot of things. They say, you solve it. And yes, because you are the closest, you're the right scale, but without the resources. The problem is not that the municipalities have to do it. And I think that you're also saying that it's not that we don't want to do it, but municipalities are the right scale and the right place for that to happen, because all the big problems in the world affects us in the local and regional space. So the regional space is where it needs to happen. I don't think it's a question. And I'm back to say that I don't think it's that the question is whether the municipalities have to do it. I think it's just that, do the municipalities have the sufficient resources and capabilities to do it? I think that almost, and the mandate to do it, with the amounts that are needed. So that's one part of my question, and that's one of the reasons why we've been working so closely with the municipality of Westerkwartier as for us a sort of a pilot, a living lab space, because we wanted to show that municipalities have to change. And this book that one of the books called Regions Taking the Lead is really why we wrote that book, to say that the challenges are so huge that locally and at that level that one, you cannot avoid it anymore, because if you have disgruntled constituents, then you're not doing your work. Because I think, as far as I've understood, municipalities are there to make sure for the well-being and the safety of the citizens. So if you reframe and look at what are the most 3 urgent challenges that is affecting the safety, the well-being of your, and the future-proofness of your region, and you get your one way we do it, as we always advocate, is that just get down and say, what are your 3 main challenges? And if you're smart, you do it with your constituents, but it takes a lot of bravery to do that. But at least start within your community and say, what are that? And once you have that, you will understand that if that's the 3 most challenging and threatening challenges, then the next question is, what needs to happen? And then you go to say, okay, who do we need to solve this? And how do we do this? And that's when, if you follow that process, and that's the process of the wheel. But I think that Arne, I don't know if you've shared it before, the complexity tool. That's an even more detailed tool to the processes of dealing with complex challenges. You start by identifying and appreciating that there are complex challenges and the urgency to deal with it. So it's like you have to create the sense of urgency, and you have to create ownership for the agenda. So we call it, in taking one of the things we say, and we're now replicating it and looking into it deeper in the project on skills shift or the regional transition, is that you need to create a local or regional agenda, and the agenda then becomes the leading thing. I don't know whether this helps you to answer. Okay, thank you. So just given the time, I'm just going to give, I think there's Alistair wants to ask a question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Charlotte, for your question. Alistair, you're next.
Hi. Yeah, I'd also like to prompt our hub leaders from practice to also at least give their opinion on how does it sound, and how do you translate it to your everyday practice, etc. But obviously, I'm from, let's say, I'm a research dude. Let's say in this context, I'm from the FISTA Institute as well as Karl Martin, but he's in some conversation now. And I'd like to first of all, thanks a lot for the presentation. I have had a look at some of your publications, especially the ones linked to systems thinking, which is also something I'm very fond of. But thank God that Arne booked you in today, because it's I appreciate a lot that you fitted a presentation that is very good for us. I mean, thinking of how we are operating, there's so many overlaps, so many commonalities. I'm going to share something with you with one question or hypothesis. On the horizon of what we're doing here in SIRR, we're working with hubs that are totally differently embedded in their regional governance system. They have a different legal form, their municipalities, educational institutions, tourist and business development company like Louise's here. So I'm wondering is how we are operating in SIRR currently, is that fit to the task of doing transformative development? Because why am I wondering about this? Because the assumption of the multiple helix feeding into a hub, that to become independent and legitimate to take the lead, sometimes I'm wondering, do we need something new? I'm not always fond of putting new things in the world, but do we need a new structure that legally binds or somehow contractually, factually binds the commitment and gives the legitimacy to the helixes to then say, hello, region, we want to transform these places and region towards sustainability? Do you think that that is the way to go, a way to go, or is it totally okay, potentially successful when we keep the hub structures and then arrange a different way of, convening and creating that legitimacy? I'm a bit, wondering.
I hear you.
You know what I mean?
Thank you for the question. Great question. I mean, thanks a lot. I mean, like, okay, where are we going with this? Okay, great. No, no, but this is the reality. There are two things I can say. I mean, just given the time, in complexity. So I will answer it differently. In complexity, and this is related to governance. It's always how you define the contain. It's called the container. What's the container of whether it's a hub, whether it's a region? So the first thing is you can change a lot of things by changing the container. And within the container, one of the most important things, and I think that is how I would, as a very quick answer to you, is the simple rules. Simple rules is one of the mechanisms that you can use in complex situations to do that. And I want to say that within the context, and this is very difficult, but because legal frameworks and mandates are some of especially if they are legal regulatory frameworks, are things you have to always work within. So I'm just going to say that within that, simple rules are a great way to do it. And a great example I learned from Sweden, and I think there's some people here from Sweden, a long time ago. They were one of the pioneers on cluster policy. What they did a very simple thing. They changed the funding rules. Most hubs are government finance, mostly, not always, sometimes membership, but what all they did, the municipality of Karlstad, municipality, or maybe it was the national government and it sort of came down. They just changed one rule. They said you get your money if you collaborate with other hubs. So changing and then suddenly, instead of having 4 hubs in the Karlstad region, they had to collaborate. And what was really beautiful about that is that in the end, out of that collaboration, and it, obviously it takes a little bit of a process of how to figure that out. But what happened is that out of that, they created a whole new industry, forest-based economics. It wouldn't have happened if the funding rule did not work. So even within those hubs, within the context and regulatory fund, I will add funding, regulatory and legal frameworks. Changing the rules is one very effective way to change the whole game. So you either change the game, I'm just going to use the metaphor of a game, by changing the container, so the space in which people work, but in combination with the rules of the game. The rules of the games is your governance. The second thing I want to just very briefly mention is that maybe that was not clear in my slide. When I said the multiple helix, you made an assumption that then it's the hub. For me, that's not the case. Hubs can be maybe even part of the multiple helix.
Yeah, definitely.
And
the hub is both. It's the center and the spokes.
Yes. Okay. So, but I just want to say that, but I think what is more important is that collective sense-making process that has to happen in the hub, and that's including the people who are giving the mandate. So that's one way so giving ownership to the challenge that a hub has been created for. So I don't think it's so much as a new structure, but sometimes it helps even to have an overarching, but we all know how that works, because that's the normal way to do it. If this doesn't work, go to a new one, or you create a new level. But actually would be even better, like I said, the bottom up is really important. Almost get the gathering of the crowd as part of the hub to be giving it more space and democratic voice, and to say, what are your three, I mean, this is a very simple way to start, is always ask, what are your three most urgent challenges that you are facing as part of this, the space within which the hubs are creating. If you make all of them do that, to identify those key places, and then to create tables or places where people can come together and at least just talk about the complexity of that and the different pathways to it, I think you start to get the conversations going. When you get the conversation going, you're already transforming your ecosystem. So this is my slow, almost like a very quick and dirty, fast, but it is the basis of how you change your system. So I hope that makes sense, and that helps. And I'm happy to, have another session where we can have a working session. One of the things we do, and maybe just, I don't know if Arne has ever done this in all I work a lot with a colleague, Carl, who's a co-author of most of all the books I write with. When we do sessions with groups, it's always a hands-on session. We always draw. We make people make rich pictures. Why? Because when you make and people want to rush to solutions, we always slow them down, and we ask them, take one challenge within your space, whatever that is, and you get people to just work on their own first, and this is very important, and then work as a group in a smaller groups usually, and then to come with bring all those inputs together, and you will see that that's how you build rich pictures, because then they have to talk about how they saw the problem and how they thought who need to be involved, how they thought the solution be, and that's the process of collecting sense making. And then you work with with everybody else in the room, and you test it, and so that's but slowing down to stop and identify what is the challenge, what is the complexity of the challenge, and what does it really mean. We need to take a lot more time, and if you do that already, you're really way ahead than most people. So that's going to be the way I'm going to start saying. And like I said, throw the question in, what are the three urgent challenges, because that's going to unite people. And then you'll start to get the mandates, and then it's not just about, and be very, very careful, the government needs to be both a facilitator and a participant. And that's something that doesn't happen enough. Okay. So Arne, I'm sorry I've taken that.
Thank you so much. No, it's quite all right. Thank you very much for your explanation. Do we have any other questions for the last 2 minutes of this session? If not, I would like to pick up on what Anu has just said and set up a bit of a thought experiment at the end of this session for you, especially for the hub partners. And this is also partly coming back to Alistair's question, really. What's in it for us as hubs? I think this is going to be important. This is what we have to take away from this session, and what we have to build up on in future seminars, and also in a workshop that is happening in March, I think. So my question to you would be, if you would pick the most urgent regional challenge that you are currently working on, that you're currently trying to manage, what do you think makes it complex? Or is it a complex challenge in the first place? You've just now had a lot of information on what actually defines a complex regional challenge. So that is a question that I would like you to ask yourself after the session. This, looking at the clock, it's not something that we can wrap up at this point, but I would like you to do this as a thought experiment for after the session, really. And also as a next step, and this is also adapted from the rich picture methodology that Anu just mentioned, I always find it helpful to create scenarios. In this rich picture methodology, you are working with doom and success scenarios, for instance. So a doom scenario would be if you imagined a future in 10 years from now, in which you have completely failed to tackle any of the issues that you're working on. It's as bad as it can be, really. And now you would have ask yourself, what circumstances, what behaviors, and what kind of choices led to that negative outcome. And this really gets you thinking about what you should avoid in the first place. And then, in opposition to that, you can also think about a success scenario in which you picture a future in 10 years from now in which you have completely succeeded in managing the chosen challenge. And then you would have to ask yourself, what interventions did you take? And what behaviors led to that positive circumstance? And this is something that I would just like you to think about after this session with all of the information that you have accumulated here. And I would close up by just saying again, Anu, it's been a great pleasure. I always find it very inspiring to hear to your presentations and your stories. I think it was great to have you here. It's showing us a lot of new leads on where to go, on how to build up on these ideas and concepts in the future. And thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure.
You're more than welcome, and thank you for letting me share. Thank you so much, and good luck with everything. And well, you know where to find me, to Anna, anyways. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm sure there are so many other questions here in the room as well, but we will stay in touch. Thank you very, very much for your presentation, taking time. Yeah.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You want to stay on, Arne?